Good evening to one and all. On behalf of Philosophy family, I would like to extend a hearty welcome to all the scholars and teachers of philosophy of our country and abroad to be associated with this Sunday webinar. Friends, Philosophy family has been conducting webinar about more than 400 virtual programs on different occasions and particularly on Sundays. And today it's a privilege to have with us an eminent scholar of our country, Dr. Alok Tandon sir. I welcome Dr. Alok Tandon sir to be with us. Today he will be speaking on the theme science and religion, are they compatible? It is a very interesting subject for all of us. You know that Dr. Alok Tandon sir is a very senior academician of our country. He is a regular and active participant in philosophy family. He has benefited all of us by sharing his reflective thought and observation on different fundamental issues of philosophy throughout, and being an eminent educationist, columnist, orator, and writer. Dr. Alok Tandon sir has benefited a lot, and we all have been benefited by his scholarly endeavor. Dr. Alok Tandon sir has already obtained 3 master degrees and PhD in philosophy, and he always motivates and influences us to be engaged in philosophical activities. He has conferred with many awards in national level. Dr. Tandon sir is associated with many philosophical forums of our country and abroad, like Akhila Bharatiya Darshanika Mancha and others. Dr. Tandon has contributed many research papers, and all have been published in eminent journals of national and international repute. He has, to his credit, he has published 3 books which have gained popularity in national level and international level. The area of interest of Dr. Tandon is Marxist philosophy, Gandhian philosophy, philosophy of science, philosophy of religion, and many others that we don't want to reflect upon. And Dr. Tandon sir has always cooperated us, and he has made most of the webinars of philosophy family active and interactive, and due to him we are able to make the academic activities of philosophy family much more fruitful. And today I welcome Dr. Tandon sir to our philosophy family to share his experience on science and religion. With him, I also welcome other senior faculty members of our country, like Professor Ranjit Ghosh sir, Professor Basudev, and others to be with us. I bow down before them for being associated with us. I welcome our admin and host, Professor Pramod Kumar Das. Today, he will moderate in interactive session in the absence of Dr. K. Undarnao, our regular moderator. With this, once again, I welcome the speakers and the learned participants of this Sunday webinar. And with this, I welcome Dr. Alok Tandon sir to commence his speech. Over to Tandon sir.
Thank you very much. Am I audible?
Yes, sir, audible, sir.
Okay, thank you. So, first of all, I must thank the organizers of the Philosophy Family for running the show for the last 2-3 years regularly. They must be congratulated for that, and I must thank them for asking me to share my thoughts about this very controversial subject. I would also like to thank Professor Indu Khanduri, who introduced me to this platform earlier. Uh, without wasting any time, I would come to my topic. And first of all, I will like to discuss a bit about the significance of this inquiry, of the relationship between religion and science. Then I will talk about the possible relationships, such typology, the models suggested for understanding the relationship between science and religion. After that, I will talk about some of the charges, some of the objection, some of the something critical or critique of science developed by some Westerners. And after that, I will come to my own conclusion. It is not necessary to agree with my conclusion, but if I am able to raise some questions and make you think, I think my efforts are worthwhile. So, first of all, why to choose this topic? We all know that there is a history of conflict between religion and science in the West. For hundreds of years, they quarreled, and ultimately, after a long fight with the church, religion has to leave that prominent position in the public sphere. But we now see a resurgence of religion in various forms, such as fundamentalism, revivalism, and as a dangerous religious terrorism also all over the world, especially in our parts of the world. So this is a phenomena which was unexpected. People thought that with the advent of modernity and with the modernization of the societies, religion will go back to the private sphere. But that has not happened. Instead, now we see religion very much powerful along with the politics of the various countries. So this is a new phenomenon. Another more important thing is that many times we hear people blaming science for the ecological crisis we are facing. Is science responsible for that? Or those corporates as well as states, powerful states who use the scientific knowledge for their profit and power, they are responsible. Another way of looking into it is that, and it is more important for a country like India, that here people will say that there is no conflict between religion and science in India. What we are seeing is there is some sort of compromise, and very happy compromise between religion and technology in India. People are very happy to use scientific knowledge in the form of technology for their own comfortable life. And they damn care about the scientific way of thinking which lies behind that technological conflict between religion and science in India is camouflaged into some sort of happy union, harmony. But that is not true. When anybody like Dr. Dhabolkar or some other person who questions the unscientific beliefs of the people and tries to inculcate some sort of rationality, some sort of scientific uh, temper in the people, he is murdered. So the whole issue of science and religion is still very dormant in India, but it needs to be opened up and it needs to be looked into very very seriously. Otherwise, we will land into a sort of uh, you can say a very sort of religious appropriation of science. So now I come to the various models, the typology which has been suggested by the scholars for the purpose of understanding the relationship between religion and science. There are two very noted scholars like Hott and Barber. Here I will just focus on the Barber's typology, and that is given in his book, 1990 book, that is Religion in an Age of Science. Here he talks about four models of relationship between religion and science. Uh, First one is conflict model. Second one is independent model. Third one is dialogical model. And the fourth one is integration model. I will briefly discuss all the four models and then try to come to some sort of conclusions. But we must remember these are typologies. These are not the final outcome. So first, let me introduce conflict model. Conflict model is, from centuries, there has been a fight between religion and science, which we talked earlier. And this model is based upon that conflict. And it is between the materialist, the skeptic materialist, the scientist, and those who fundamentalist or the religious fundamentalist. So they say, science people say that science is objective, religion is subjective. Science is universal, religion is parochial. Science is rational, religion is emotional. And science is based on solid evidences, but religion is based on disagreeing traditions. So there are four levels of conflict between religion and science. First level is the epistemic level. Here, science will say that the scientific belief is based on the testing, the concrete facts, the evidence, publicly available testing. But the religion is not ready to put their beliefs into that scientific framework to find out truth of those beliefs. So that is this historical conflict. As we know that in the history of science, there was a lot of harassment done to, for instance, Galileo and other Brentano, and also there are many people who still do not believe in the theory of evolution, and they are and we know that in the present context there is and atheists in America, and those who believe in the evolution theory and those who believe in the divine creation theory. So this historical conflict still continues up to the present time. Then we also have some sort of, you can say, a conflict, ethical conflict. When we know from the history of philosophy that it was many times asked, even by the Epicurus, that either God is all powerful or is not kind enough. Thus, evidence of suffering in society, in human beings, questions the existence of God. Because if he is not ready to remove the suffering of the people, and he himself has created those suffering, then he is either not all powerful or he is very cruel. So the problem of evil, as we discuss in philosophy, is also a question mark against the existence of the God. Again, we have got some sort of, you can say, a social evolution of evaluation of religion, and this is done by many sociologists, and they say the religion as it functions in society it is very helpful to the powerful classes of the society to camouflage the inequalities and the exploitation of the masses. So the function of religion is also questioned, and it is said that science is liberator and religion is exploiter. So this way, we find that scientific uh, materialists and those who believe in Bible, Quran, or Shastras in Indian society also, they are at loggerheads, and they find that that this conflict is eternal, it will continue. And there is one more point I have missed, that is the hermeneutical conflict is also there, because all religious texts are being interpreted in various ways. So there is no unanimity about the religious standpoint in religions also. So this is the way this historical conflict has been seen, and this model is still very much in continuation. But the problem with this model is that it takes the relationship in a very dichotomous manner, and it is it reduces science and religion to some sort of uh, uh, eternal conflict, in which it is said that science necessarily leads to some sort of atheism. So this conflict between new atheists as well and these those who believe in divine theory continues, and we can see this in America in many ways, even in public sphere as well as in law courts everywhere. So now I come to the next model of relationship, that is the independence relationship. Here it is thought that religion and science, they are independent of each other, they are autonomous, they ask different questions, their methodologies are different, and they are both limited. Science asks how. The question behind science is how. For religion, it is why. Science domain is public, religious domain is personal. Science domain is also objective. The inquiry is data-based. Religion concentrates more on the nature of goodness, evil, meaning of life. Again, their methodology, so for science it is logic, experiment, but for religion it is revelation and spiritual experience. So the science language is quantitative and religious language is analytical, not analytical, analytical and symbolic. So this way, those who believe in the independent relationship, and there are some many eminent persons like Jay Gould, who was a evolutionary biologist from Harvard University. He talked about this sort of relationship, and he said that both science and religion have got separate magisteria. He used the word magisteria, and science has got the net of empirical word, and religion has got the net of values and meaning of life, and they remain separate, and it is best that they should remain separate. But the problem is, and this model also, and the problem of human being is like that, that human beings live a want to live a coherent life. They don't want to live in separate compartments of meaning, and this factual meaning and this valuational meaning all separate. So this way, this model itself becomes practically problematic. Now I come to the third model, and that model is of dialogue. And dialogical relationship is supposed to act in indirect interactions between science and religion. And they accept that there is a joint boundary between science and religion. And these boundary questions are very significant. And for both science and for religion. So we need to have some sort of dialogue between the two. And what are those boundary questions? Boundary questions are like that. Once we can ask that what happened before Big Bang? Science theory of universe, origin of universe is the latest one, is the Big Bang. Now the religionist will ask what happened before Big Bang? Who guided this evolution? So this way they question the scientific theories and ask these questions which science has got no answer yet. So these boundary questions about the origin of universe, origin of life, death of birth and death of human beings, and the ethical questions, which are very important, the cosmological and ethical questions on the boundary of science and religion are very important, and we need to have a good dialogue between the science and religious people, so to come out some sort of understanding between the two, if not harmony. Now the problem with this model is that though the questions are very important, but what happens in dialogues that both sides just give their opinions and information to other. They are not able to influence each other. So the dialogue remains unfruitful, and we continue with the very much conflictual way of looking at things. Fourth model is that of integration. So integration relationship, many people think that because of the common boundary and because of there is overlapping between science and religion on various spheres, so we can have some sort of integration between the two, and this integrative relationship can be has been developed in two ways. One is natural theology and another is theology of nature. Natural theology people, they believe that this the old argument of existence of God, they think that if there is a watch, there must be a watchmaker, this type of argument. And they also uh, continue, they also accept that strong anthropic argument that this whole uh, universe supposes a sort of, uh, you can say, the fine tuning of laws and existence of laws, the existence of universe itself. This supposes there must be a designer of this universe. So this way, they just want to have their standpoint along with the scientific understanding, and they try to bring that metaphysical understanding into the scientific knowledge to integrate the two. Others are, they belong to theology of nature. They want to reformulate religions. They want to say that God neither intervenes, neither nor controls, nor dictates the life of human beings, and so they need to that God is not responsible for all the activities of human beings, and all the old religions need to be reformulated to adjust the scientific knowledge which has come about in the last 4 or 5 centuries. So this way we find this last model, the integrating model, it is a bit, uh, you can say, skewed towards theism, and and scientific arguments are not very well taken in this model. In response to that, there is another, you can say, model which is some sort of replacement model. It can be said to be the fifth model. Here, some social biologists like Wilson, they will say, if we understand the evolution of religion, the existence of religion in a within the theory of evolution, then we can find out that um, this neuro uh, structure of human beings was developed for the survival of human beings, and this whole idea of religion and its activity is just a survival mechanism for human beings, and nothing more should be expected from that. Once we understand how this works in human brain, we can be able to discard religion altogether. So now, after discussing all the five or four, fifth is just my addition. So all these models we have seen, but the question is how to have our own standpoint, how to develop our own understanding. Is any one of these models perfect enough to give us our own understanding? I feel no. We have to use them very, very selectively with our own understanding of science and religion. So, for that purpose, I would take some of the critical issues regarding science. First of all, I will take the issue of scientism. Religious people attack science, saying that the assumption that science can only give the reliable knowledge, science is the only source of reliable knowledge, is not science. It is just a belief, and it is an epistemological belief, and those who believe in this are not scientists, but they believe in scientism. And because of that, it is a metaphysical belief. Science is very modest. Science is an attempt to understand the world, and we should not identify science with scientism. I think this is a very, very good way of attacking science. But here, to understand what science means and what it does not mean, what is the epistemology of science and what is the metaphysical provision. So for that, I will like to distinguish between the methodological naturalism and metaphysical naturalism. Methodological naturalism is a standpoint. It is a commitment of science that it will search for natural phenomena in natural causes. It will not go for any supernatural causes. And it has been so far successful. And the success of 400-500 years of scientific activity is a proof of its reliability. The proof of its may not be the only way to understand the world, but it may not be the most perfect way of to understand the world, but it is the most reliable and uh, you can say dependable way of understanding the world. Its success at least forces us to accept it. But this methodological understanding is essential for science. Without that, there is no science. But the metaphysical naturalism, which believes that there is no supernatural entity and there is nothing like supernatural phenomena, does not come from the activity of science. It is a metaphysical standpoint. Science cannot prove it, science cannot disprove it. It is only the working ontology, the provisional ontology of science, and this can be questioned, as it has been questioned by many religious people. But the thing is that if science cannot prove the existence of God, if it cannot disprove the existence of God, can religion prove the existence of God? So with this question, we come to a sort of understanding that procedural demands of science is there, essentially the methodological naturalism, and that is their commitment, but through the natural explanations, and that is unconditional. That is non-negotiable also. That all the claims of science should be tested against a body of publicly accessible evidence. But metaphysical naturalism is just a working ontology, and it can be changed also with coming of new facts, new theories, new understanding. But so far, religious people have not been able to come out with any sort of evidence which can be publicly tested for the existence of God. So with this distinction, we can now understand what science is and what science is not. The whole realm of metaphysics still remains open for speculation of those who believe that science will be able one day to answer all the questions, and the god of gaps, what they call, is slowly and slowly is narrowing. But those who think that this will never be possible, they continue to believe in God. So this is the metaphysical issue, and I think science cannot decide this. Neither can religious people. This conflict of metaphysical understanding is bound to continue. Now I may come to some other attacks on science, and one very important one is the postmodern critique of science. There are many postmodern thinkers nowadays which think that they go with the social constructivism, and they propose or they postulate that all knowledge is constituted by the society in which it is produced, and also the criteria of what validity, what is truth and what is not truth, is also decided by that, the value extraction of that society. And this is a big claim, and this tells upon the universality of science. And it is a sort of cultural relativism. It is a sort of social constructiveness of all knowledge, including science. Can we accept it? I think postmodern thinkers and their critique of science is invalid. Why? Because it it questions the universality of science. Now, instead of giving many arguments against it, I will simply say that the experience of corona, how we dealt it successfully, is the result of vaccine. And this vaccine was, whether it was produced in India, China, or in any other country, it was universally effective. And had there been no vaccine produced by modern science, we could have not been able to count the deaths of human beings. So, could we answer the crisis, the challenge of corona with the traditional knowledge systems? Many times these postmodern critics of science, they talk about the Western science, Indian science, Vedic science, and they propose that they are as valid in their social context as they are in others. But the question is the law of Newton changes from when it is applied in Paris, it is different from when it is applied in Delhi? I think the whole criticism of postmodernity on of science is not valid. Only thing we can understand from them is that the difference between the logic of choosing the problem of issue of or any problem in science, but the logic of inquiry is different from the logic of justification. And we must understand science is based on the logic of justification. And as we have already discussed, that it is the methodological naturalism. It is the empirical. It is observation based. It is experiment based. It is based on predictions and testing of those predictions. And the very important issue with science is what is that rejection of any theory and also the revision of any hypothesis in the light of new facts. And all this is open to public confirmation done by the peers of that scientific community. Now the question is that the knowledge of given by science is tentative. It is always probable. Science never claims that the knowledge produced by science is absolute, as it is claimed by the religions. So, we can say that this postmodern critique of science is not valid, and this has been very much shown in this corona experience. And we have earlier we have also seen that this vaccine and this treatment for many diseases like cholera, TB, and other medicines which were produced by modern science were equally effective in India as well as in the West. So, but there are other critics also. They say science is also based on faith, just like religions. And science people can be equally guilty of having some sort of faith. I think any activity, any cognitive activity has got some assumptions, and we must accept that. There are certain assumptions of scientific activity also, and these assumptions are that these are the basic assumptions. Without that, scientific activity cannot take place. And these assumptions are: number one, that there is a reality outside, which we are going to investigate. This reality is intelligible. Unless this is assumed, how can we go into that inquiry? Another next point is that human brain, human mind is capable of understanding the universe. And this idea of fit with the evidence and what is true and what is not is also is some sort of assumption for the activity of science to take place. But the question is, are these assumptions are of the same level as those of the blind faith of the religious or the religions? Because these assumptions have come out of the scientific activity of 400-500 years, the success of that activity, that these assumptions can be taken to be true. But what happens in religion? They are ungrounded beliefs, and they are faiths which are never tested empirically like scientific propositions. So unless we accept that this whole methodological naturalism of science is essential, and this distinguishes science from religion. And this is the, you can say, the main qualitative advantage of science over religion. And this has led to the total transformation through technology of human society. And its success is also is some sort of argument which and a challenge which religious people have to answer. So we must also try to understand what Thomas Kuhn has said about science, and some critics of science use Thomas Kuhn against science, and they say that he has come out with some sort of subjectivity in science, and also he is talking about the values of science. So I must say that this is the wrong interpretation of Kuhn. The paradigm shift, the concept he gave in the beginning, he in a later part of his career, he relinquished that concept. And also, he is not saying that the values of science are like our moral and aesthetic values. He's talking about the values of science are the values which decide the validity of we can say they are the concept of fit, that every knowledge claim it has got some predictive consequences, and it should fit with the theory, and ideas must be consistent, fit with each other, and theory should be able to show that all the previous ideas, they are fitting together, and this theory can predict and be more useful in explaining the phenomena than the previous one. So this way science progresses. And and to say all these assumptions behind science as something like faith in religion is also, I think, somewhat invalid. And we should not understand science in terms of religion. So, having some sort of discussion like this, now I would like to conclude. And before that, I would like to say a few words about Indian situation also. And that is, I think, very, very controversial, and that may provoke many listeners today. That when we apply this understanding of modern science to our traditional knowledge systems, we find that most of the metaphysical claims or the propositions of our Vedas, yoga, Ayurveda, these are all unscientific claims. There may be some sort of science behind them, but that has not been worked out properly. We cannot understand these claims in scientific vocabulary. And there is a big gap between the claims and the scientific understanding of them. So, with that comment, now I come to my conclusion. My conclusion is that all the four, you can say, models, they are imperfect, and we should use them very, very selectively. And though we can start with conflict model, but we should also try to make it a, though it is a historical reality, but for future we can try to avoid, tone down, or mitigate the conflict in the course of uh, adopting some sort of uh, characteristics of the other three models. But they have got their limitations. As I said, independence model can work till there is no interference by science into religion and religion into science. And this is not possible because of the religion's views of cosmology. And they go against the modern understanding of cosmology in science, in physical sciences. Similarly, dialogue is possible, but only on the joint border, and that too on the metaphysical level. Because science cannot prove or disprove God, science does not lead to some sort of atheism necessarily. So a person can still believe in metaphysical idealism, and but methodological naturalism is essential condition for science, and for that it is non-negotiable, and science cannot leave that for the benefit of religion. So metaphysical naturalism can be treated as provisional ontology, and that can go on along with the metaphysical idealism of religions. Integration is possible only when religions walk away from the domain of knowledge and leave that to science only. And as once Russell said, there can be no conflict between science and religion if religion restricts itself to the way of feeling rather than a set of beliefs. Science cannot touch it, but this is also not practically possible. In the end, I would like to suggest that how can a dialogue take place between science and religion? We know that Science and religion, science itself is still not has been able to give all the answers, and they must come together in finding out the truth of religious claim. And that is the central truth of religious claim, that super sensuous experience is a genuine source of knowledge. And this knowledge is grounded in experience. I am talking about the mystical experience. I am talking about the religious experience, which is the central religious claim. But there is a counter claim also, that this has nothing to do with knowledge. It is only a different, artificially created mental state in the brain, and it does not tell us anything about the external world. I still remember there was a yogi named Swami Ram who uh, started Himalayan Institute, I think, in Dehradun and Rishikesh. He was a yogi long back, I think 30, 40 years back, when I was a graduate student of science. He offered himself to doctors of AIMS to test what happens when a yogi goes into samadhi. And they came out with certain findings that yes, when in samadhi, the brain waves change, and some brain waves lead to a sort of calmness. So if religious people like Swami Ram or the mystics, they offer themselves to scientific science people, to inquire into what happens when a person undergoes some sort of religious experience, then we can come out with some findings. Those findings may be able to remove that conflict between the science and religion. Another issue which is very important in the 21st century is the hard problem of consciousness. We know that no integration between science and religion take place unless this hard problem of consciousness is resolved. Because most of the religions view consciousness as some sort of cosmic consciousness pervading the universe, existing outside human body, which is contested by science people, that they find no evidence of science of consciousness outside human body. So a lot of research is being done to understand consciousness, and I think biology is the science of the 21st century, but still they have not been able to find out how consciousness emerges in the brain, though there is no evidence of consciousness outside brain. Once brain is dead, there is no consciousness. So this area is wide open, and unless this is resolved, this problem is resolved, I think the religion and the science people must tolerate each other till this is resolved in their favor or disfavor. So you can start with also with the scientific study of religion also, and mystical experience, and we should also look into a epistemological question, that should religious claims be verifiable according to their own standards or according to standards of natural science. So another question with which we can think about, that can we restrict religions to the metaphysical level, where there is lot of disagreement, and these disagreement have continued in philosophy for the thousands of years. So, but can we restrict religion to that? When religion claims to harmonize the control or to give guidance to the individual as well as collective life of the society, and given the history of religion, how this can be possible. So I think with that, I conclude my talk today, and I am open to all the questions. I will try to answer as well as I can. Thank you.